So continuing on where we left off yesterday, we were talking about the concept of using animals on Shabbat. I'm going to try and move along with this because we've spent some time on it, and it's not so practical. I'm going to try and get to the things that we had said. So we had talked about not riding an animal like a horse or something like that, a donkey on Shabbat. Not only are we not allowed to ride it on its back, on a saddle or something like that, but also you're not allowed to ride in a wagon pulled by an animal. For the same reason that the animal may not work, right? Of course, this does not apply. Someone had asked this the other day. Do all the rules transfer to other areas? This does not necessarily apply to a situation which we do see. You don't see too many of us riding in drawn carriages or things like that today. But on Shabbat, something that's pretty common that we'll see in our community is the rickshaw. The human pulling, pushing the, pedaling the bike. That's not a problem. Okay. He says, interesting. He says, we've been talking about the concept of an animal not being allowed to work on Shabbat. So that meant that not only am I not allowed to work the animal, but my animal may not be worked even by a non-Jew. Meaning if I own a horse, it's not enough that I can't ride the horse. I can't even let a non-Jew ride the horse, because remember, the issue isn't simply whether or not it benefits me or impacts me, but it's also a problem of my animal needing a break. And if it's my animal, then it doesn't matter who's riding it or not. The non-Jew may not ride it. Okay, so now let's talk something that is a lot more practical and normal, something that happens a lot, and that is what about some version of a seeing eye dog or some other animal that services. Let's start with the blind, and then we'll talk about it again as we had started a couple of days ago. We mentioned that the definition of this pet today has vastly expanded. We're going to come back to that. So it says, "Mutar lesomeh letset l'reshut rabim b'Shabbat l'viat kelev, af al pi she'ochez b'ritzuah hakshura b'kelev." He says a blind person can go out into the street following a dog, the dog escorting him, even though the Jew is being pulled along by the dog, right? So here the dog is working. The dog is serving the human. So he says, so first of all, you do have to worry about whether or not there's some element of carrying in the public domain, but basically what it'll end up being is that for us, it's not a problem, and therefore some version of a seeing eye dog or something like that would be allowed. A blind person would be allowed to go into the public with his dog, and the dog is helping him see. Now the question is, does that apply to other versions of what a seeing eye dog is today, right? Because I mentioned a couple of days ago, and this is new to me. I didn't know this until I want to say winter break. When I was in the airport, I noticed, and I'm sure it's going on a lot longer than that. The concept of a service animal is in America is different than just simply for a blind person. I noticed this when I was on the plane or what have you, that a lot of people had animals with them, and they were being categorized as service pets. And I noticed that the people were not blind, and I started asking, and maybe everyone knows this, and I'm new, but maybe you didn't. I started asking, and I asked them, what's the story here? And if you could determine that the animal serves some other kind of need for you, like an emotional need, you get anxiety and the dog calms you down, you're lonely and the dog provides you with comfort, then this could be categorized as a service pet. I didn't know this before. I don't know if anyone else knew this before. Apparently it's true because I've seen it with my own eyes. So how would that be considered as a service pet for this purpose as well? I'd say it probably would still count because the purpose of the dog is to provide, some kind of physical, emotional benefit as opposed to doing any kind of work or lifting anything or anything of that nature, and therefore, we'd be somewhat lenient in those areas as well. That's my suspicion, although I haven't seen it written anywhere in the halacha. It seems to me that that's how it would make sense. Now, here's one of the more challenging ones. Because of everything that we've said about animals and how we deal with them and so on, here is one that's challenging for any kind of pet owner or something like that. I'll read and I could tell you. Well, let me read it first. Asur letaltel behema hayava off kevan shehem bichlal muktzeh. Says, and this is pretty much straight out of Shulchan Aruch. So he says it's forbidden to carry an animal, any kind, whether it be domesticated, wild, a bird, or anything like that, because those animals are in the category of what we call muktzeh. Muktzeh means they're set aside not for use on Shabbat. From before Shabbat, what purpose does the animal provide for you on Shabbat? It doesn't, and there's things you're not allowed to do with it, so it becomes forbidden. It becomes forbidden to carry. That's the concept of muktzeh. So animals are muktzeh, and therefore you may not lift them up, right? So if you, according to what we read, if you own a cat, a dog, a bird, a duck, a hamster, a gerbil, to lift it would be forbidden.
Rabbi, even in the house, even like indoors, if you
it has nothing to do with indoors, outdoors, or anything like that. This would be true even if you need. Let's say the animal is sitting on your seat, right? And you want to lift it off your chair so you could use the chair, or bed, or table, or whatever it may be. You don't want the animal, you want just the spot that the animal's in, and you want to move it. Sometimes in muktzeh, and we didn't really talk about the laws of muktzeh yet, we will get there. Sometimes for certain things that you're not allowed to move on Shabbat, for example, a pen, right? A pen is muktzeh. What's a pen muktzeh? Because the purpose of a pen is to do what? To write, and writing is forbidden on Shabbat. So since the object, the purpose of that object is forbidden on Shabbat, once Shabbat starts, this becomes off limits. I can't get up and move it. And that's why from before Shabbat, I'm supposed to put it somewhere else and so on. Okay, that's the basic rule of a pen. I don't want to go too deep into this because I want to just demonstrate one thing. However, if I noticed that I left a pen on my dining room table, right? And now I need to use my dining room table for Shabbat, right? And the pen is, quote, in the way, right? I am allowed to walk over, pick up the pen, and move it somewhere else because the pen is not being lifted for the purpose of the pen. The pen is being lifted for the purpose of the place where the pen is, and therefore I am able to move the pen. That's a basic law in the concept of muktzeh. We'll get to it at another point in time. But what we're saying is that basic law of muktzeh does not apply for animals, right? Meaning I can't lift the animal even if I need its spot, not the animal itself. I still won't lift the animal. He says, even if this might cost you money, right? He says, and the example that he says is, you have utensils or clothing, and the animal is bouncing around on them, and you're afraid he's going to break it or poop on it or something like that, and then you're going to get damaged. He says, even still, asur tosam b'yadayim, you still can't grab it or lift it with your hand. It says, "Afilu mumurgal b'bayit mizman and Rabbi," says, even if this is something that's around your house all the time. He says, in calls he says, nevertheless, asur l'tlo b'yadayim mishum muktzeh, you can't lift it up. What do you have to do? You have to shoo it. You could wave it away. You could even maybe push it away, but you can't lift it up. You can't carry it. Says because the concept of lifting something that is mukteh is forbidden, even if it's going to cost you money. So that's the halacha. And I'll read one more aspect of the halacha. He says, he says people who raise animals in their homes, right? So here he's using a dog. He says, and they lift them up on, and they carry them on their backs or things like that. They're committing a sin. It says, so too people that have cats or birds. Guests that go to their homes need to be careful not to carry them, lift them up. But you can feed them on Shabbat. You can provide, you could place food in front of them and so on, which we're going to get to in a second. How do you feed animals in these types of situations? So I'm not a pet owner, as I said from the beginning. I have very little to do with pets. In fact, one of the last people on the planet that will own a pet is me. It's just not my thing. Animals belong outside. That's my thing. And anytime my wife and my children, who have over 20 plus years of my marriage, asked, can we get a pet? It's a no. So you have to know that about me from the beginning. So I have very little compassion for this thing. But I imagine if I was a pet owner, that some of these halachot will be challenging. The truth is, I don't know. It seems like you could have a pet, you could let it run around, but you can't lift it up and carry it and so on. So is that problematic for a pet owner? I don't know. It would seem like it would be for me, but that's the halacha. I haven't spent a lot of time researching other alternatives about maybe there's other opinions or whatever. That's Shulchan Aruch, so that's the real, that's a psak. I don't know how, if this presents, difficult problems for pet owners and how they deal with it. So I don't know if anyone has any questions about that, but yeah.
Rabbi, can you put a leash on a dog and walk it on Shabbat? Because it might be a necessity to keep a dog. I mean,
right. So it's a good question. So I would say in an eruv, it could definitely be a problem. Without an eruv, it could definitely be a problem because I think it would be potentially carrying. Without the eruv, with an eruv, I think it's okay because you're not carrying anything. It's a standard version of an animal's wearing. Yeah, so I don't. You're not lifting it or carrying it. So I don't think it's a problem to have to go for a leash that with a harness or something like that. I don't think that's a problem. For the purpose of the animal is going out and exercising. You have to be careful that the animal is not, as we've said, performing some kind of work for you, because as we said, the animal performs work. That's a problem. That's not the normal take the dog for a walk situation. So that's what I'm responding to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions about that? Otherwise, I'll move to the next thing, which is feeding the animal. And with this, we'll wrap up. So he says like this: Mutar latet b'Shabbat mezonot lifnei avazim v'tarnagolim v'yonim v'gadlim otam b'bayit shemezonothem alav. Aval otam she'em mezonotav alav asur l'troch b'shvil latet lahem mezonot. He says, you are allowed, let's say you raise birds, right? You have ducks, geese, parrots, chicks, my family had a chicken or something like that, a hen a couple of years ago, right? You raise these animals, you have them in your possession, and they count on you for food, right? That's the normal way that you do. Because it's no problem to give them some food, to put some feeder in the bird feeder or something like that. It says, but those who are, he's not responsible to feed, meaning they're not your regular animals, and you're just going outside. He says you can't burden yourself to give them food. He says so. What I'll just birds that don't belong to you, birds that have no connection to you. ולכן אין נותנים מים ולא מזונות לפני דבורים, לפני יוני שובח, לפני יוני עלייה, שמזונותיהם אין על האדם אלא שוטטים בעצמם ולא מזונותיהם. It says, so to just put water outside for animals to come and take, or for food for them to come and take, is not something that we should be doing. וכן אין להאכיל חתולים קטנים שקר, so to like cats, if you have a cat, you can, open a can of food and put it in a bowl and so on, and that's not a problem. It says, but if you're in the habit of feeding the cats in the neighborhood of around which there are many, since they are not my responsibility, and they get food from anywhere, so I am not supposed to burden myself and involve myself in feeding them. It says, however, if I have a real compassionate heart and I see these poor animals outside, he says, I am allowed to not necessarily give them food, but I can kind of throw food outside, and then it's up to the animals to go and get it. So if I'm not burdening myself, if I'm just here, throwing it out there, and I see that the animal will somehow get it, that's fine. So I'm not supposed to put on my porch and say, here, kitty, kitty, come and take from my thing. That I shouldn't do. But to simply say, here, kitty, go, whatever, it's out there. That's not there's no effort that you're expending on that, and that would be allowed. Okay. What else does he have here in terms of animals? He says you're allowed to feed your fish. So you could put food in the fish tank. Not a problem. Any cat, or dog that we set in the house, we said you could do that. He says, okay, next, okay. And he says, any food that you would, any animal, it's not, I mentioned the cat before, but this is true of any animal, a dog or any other creature that's out there that you feel bad for, and you feel if you don't feed it, it's going to suffer. Again, we talked about suffering for animals yesterday. So you are able to feed that animal, but just do it in a way that you're not, again, directly, kind of right in front of it feeding it. Put it somewhere where the animal will see it and walk away, and you could do it that way. So that's the law of feeding animals. Starting tomorrow, I'll take a question in a minute, but starting tomorrow, we're going to talk about milking a cow, or some other animal to produce its milk, and then we're going to go into another area which is significant and serious, which is the last area that has to do with animals, which is trapping animals, catching them, and so on, and the laws that apply to that, and what that extends to. We're going to get to that tomorrow. So hopefully by I guess tomorrow's what day is today? Is today Thursday?
Tomorrow's Friday.
Today Thursday. Yeah. So hopefully by that, I actually had no idea what today was.
We have Rosh coming.
Tomorrow's Friday.
Rosh Chodesh is tomorrow, right? Okay,
right.
good. Yeah. So hopefully we'll finish this. Again, I think we've started doing the days the day after yesterday or the day before tomorrow. I don't think that the dates actually have any whatever. But okay, so that's where we're going to stop today, unless anyone has any questions, and then we'll go forward.
Zaku Baruch. Good morning, everybody.
Baruch. Good morning, everybody.
Morning, everybody.